When times are easy and there's plenty to go around, individual species can go it alone. But when conditions are harsh and life is tenuous, it takes a team sworn to reciprocity to keep life going forward. In a world of scarcity, interconnection, and mutual aid become critical for survival. That was the last part of the reading that Natalie just shared. And I'm going back to that because I felt like there was a connection between that passage and what happened with my experience with the trees when I felt so tired and depleted and exhausted and like I don't know what to do and I'm even too tired to lean on a friend. The trees, they know what to do when stressed, and they said, come, lean on me. There is this wisdom I can teach you how to, in the story that Alessandra shared, what the kiddos did not mention, and I didn't hear anyone else mention, the trees learned how to share their sugar. How I translate that in my mind and why that's useful to us humanoid type people in thinking about sugar is like, can anyone guess what word I might be thinking that sugar becomes for us? Energy, that's exactly the word that I'm thinking of. So trees learn how to share their sugar, share their energy. Here I am feeling tired and depleted, and the trees are like, hey, I can help restore some of your energy. But also, I come back and I bring this message to us all because I really think we need to think about sharing our energy with each other. Like in this particular seasons of our churches, they start to get tired, and now we look at things of what are our goals as we try to end the last quarter of the church year. And many of us are tired. Many of us are looking at the things that we started the church year and like going towards, and now we're at that point, kind of at that point that I was experiencing in my 5K marathon where I'm like, oh, why did I say I was going to do this again? And I'm looking to the trees to like pump some of your sugar in me. I need some of that energy. But it's not just about feeling the spirit of renewal in me so that I can have something to lean on. It's also about thinking about the greater world, being in this place of feeling in this scarcity mindset and looking to the trees, of listening to the trees for the wisdom of how are we going to make it through. Not just if our people in this church who are doing this work of justice are getting tired, the greater world, as we gear up for, it's a political year. Things are happening in November, which hopefully we'll be gearing up as well for UU the vote. I know we haven't been talking about that, but that's a whole nother need for renewed energy. Where are we going to get that energy from? Have y'all thought about those kind of sources of renewal in your own lives? These are the kinds of questions that I'm asking as we think about how to lean into the spirit of interconnectedness, because even if we try to turn and lean on each other, if we're all tired, then what? I mean, it got really quiet in here. But right? If we're all tired and we try to lean in on each other, the silence makes me think of collapse. And so I think about, like, how do we lean out? We're surrounded by trees, and so naturally the trees would influence my thinking of, like, okay, if we lean on the trees, but who's taking care of the trees? Who's taking care of the trees? I know this community, we have a small justice-minded group. We like to fancy ourselves as a green sanctuary. But we're so tired. Are we keeping up with those connections? And that's what brings me back to the first part of the question of how are our connections? In the blurb for today's service, I referred to the words by Jeremy Lent, who is an author and founder of Liology Institute or Leology Institute. And that institute is dedicated to fostering a world that could enable humanity to thrive sustainably with the earth. That's an ambitious goal, but it's beautiful. So Jeremy Lent has said that this idea of learning from the wisdom of nature, not just trees, but also the lichen or lichen, I don't know how to say that word. He calls this pervasive interconnectedness. And he says that this is fundamental to the sense of identity that non-Western traditions fosters. And by this, he refers to this idea that when members of Native American Blackfoot tribes, and I think a lot of indigenous communities, period, when they meet, they don't ask, "How are you?" Instead, they ask, "How are the connections?" And by this, they're not just referring to your connections to your family, but how are all of the meaningful connections, the connections to your earthkin. I often connect to trees, but everybody doesn't connect to trees. How is your connection to your sense of awe and wonder of nature? How are your connections to yourself, to your spiritual community? So it's a very loaded question when indigenous people, and this quote of asking, how are the connections? Because the one that usually would come up in that kind of situation, if you and I were greeting, and I'm like, how are the connections? Oh, this one with my grandmother is quite strained because, it could be anything. Oh, this connection with my coworkers, it needs some attention. It needs a little bit of love. Do y'all understand what I mean by when asking the questions of how are your connections? Something that came up during the pastoral care moment, the joys and concerns, when I read this reading called The Titan Trees. That was by Tess, I didn't say her name, I just want to say that, Tess Baumberger, Titan Trees by Reverend Tess Baumberger. At the end of that, I included the question of if the trees lived no more, where in your body would you feel the sense of loss from that connection? And I know that could seem like a rhetorical question, like, how would I know? The trees are here. How would I know? But I ask this question because I believe that there is a place in all of our bodies that even at the thought, because I know when I think of my relatives, if somebody were to just name like, oh my God, like, how would you feel if such and such, I can't even speak the names because the ache immediately comes to my body just to think of certain relatives. And I think that the same kind of ache exists when you think of, what if all of the oceans dried up? Where in your body does that breath catch? Like, oh my God, where? What is it calling you to maybe do to nurture that feeling, that sense of connection? This is what the service is geared to ask everyone to look at. It's not just the nature around you, but the nature inside of you. The nature inside of you. And I speak to this not just because it's important, because I know a lot of us think that it's important, but some of the ways that this shows up in my day-to-day life, you wouldn't believe it. So I believe that we are all called to live in relation with nature around us, the nature within us, be mindful of this all the time. I think many of us, and by us, I don't just mean Unitarian Universalists, but I think justice-minded people who make connections with earth justice and indigenous people, the people of nature first people. There's a connection to nature and first people. in the time that I've been in this church, I've wondered about our connection to indigenous tribes in this local area. I've been wondering about this as a community that is a green sanctuary that has this deep commitment to earth justice. How is our relationship with some of the people of this land who are also committed to earth justice? And I've asked a couple of people in the community about, like, what are these relationships like? And I'm bringing this up because there's a point, there is a connection. So I've been feeling this, and recently, as I've been doing some justice work in the community, I happen to be a part of a group that is trying to make sure that all the people who are at the table are included in the advertising and that they're considering who's not here. During this looking at who's not here, someone said the Native Americans aren't included in our considerations. They're not listed, which is a beautiful thing to notice. One of the responses to this noticing, and this is on an email thread that some of y'all might know as y'all minister, I might not engage with the thread, but I notice it peripherally, like I catch it, I can see things that are happening there. And so I'm noticing in this thread that people are the Muslims connected here? Are the Native Americans connected here? And then I notice a response of, the Native Americans are not represented, and sadly, I don't have any connections. The response was, we will do an acknowledgement of former stewards of the land at the start of this program. How does that feel to you all? The Native Americans are not represented, and sadly, I don't have any connections. Oh, I recognize we don't have any connections. Let us recognize the land. Let us recognize this connection that these people have to the land. Let us at least do that. It sounds beautiful in theory, yes? In theory. But the part of, if we don't have connections to these people, perhaps it's not a good idea to do an acknowledgement of something that we don't yet have. And not this group, we're not doing that, but it is something I'm interested in, developing the relationship with the people so we can know that connection. So this is a real-time example of something that was just coming up in just some connections that I'm making with interfaith communities that are looking at how are our connections. And I hope that y'all follow this theme of this thread of exploring all of the layers and how they inform one another. The reason that I feel that all of this is so important, like I'm coming to my bottom line point of it, and I felt like it was captured really well in this quote by Reverend Gretchen Haley, and it's titled, "What is Required of Us?" And so this is the thing of what I feel is required for us as we settle into this wisdom and think of interdependence for the rest of this month and exploring it. Reverend Gretchen Haley wrote, and I believe this too, I am convinced we can transform our understanding of what is required of us, detach it from the grip of individualism and the idealizing of a bunch of individual paths and commitments of those who happen to hang out, and the fear of a powerful religious institution because it will be power used for our vision of the good. It is the key to such a transformation of what you might call a salvation of sort. This is the connection of beloved community. So moving away from individualism to interdependence, this is what leads us towards the formation of beloved community that we aspire to have. It's the full circle of connecting with the life around us, leading us to connect to the people of the life around us, which leads us to connect to ourselves, and the circle just reconnects. And this is what it's about.